people involved are thinly disguised caricatures. Some of them are combined characters, and they also have some of the events mentioned in here actually happened. I think that's the best way to phrase it. And it's a small minority, which probably gives it its more realistic flavor. We're not responsible for the management is not responsible for the contents of the rest of this.
Okay, just a couple of stage directions here. This is a cold reading, as they say.
Absolutely cold.
Many people here have never seen the script before, and the reactions may be interesting. Simply a note to the actors tonight. I'll go through your characters. Starting at the extreme right, we have Bob Owen, who will be reading tonight the role of Mark Levy. To his left, we have Victor Koman reading the role of Vincent Andrews.
Hello.
To his left, we have Samuel Edward Konkin III reading the role of Daniel Albert Conrad IV. I will be reading the role of Joel Rosenbaum. And to my left, reading the role of Peter Braun is Kent Hastings.
But he has nothing in common with the character except his German background, right?
Yeah, I figured this out.
So set it up for us.
Okay. Essentially, the way this is going to work tonight is that all narration and stage commentaries and everything in italics, everything in brackets, I'll be doing the reading of, and everybody else will be reading their parts, and I hope this is going to work out.
And we'll all be enunciating and projecting for the sake of the VCR and the people in the back seats.
Start your timer.
The person in the back seat.
Okay. Cult of the Individual, a comedy in one egoistic act. Scene 1, August 1975. Scene: 4 furnished but as yet unoccupied one-room apartments in a low-rent district, 1 implied stage right of and 2 implied above, the set we see, with a backdrop showing a palm tree-lined street and the Queen Marian Harbor, visible through open windows and doors upstage. Establishing this as Long Beach, California. A door from upstage, kitchen appliances, and a dividing wall establishes this as a separate apartment with an outside walkway behind the apartments connecting them. Usual apartment accoutrements, dining table, couch, desk, etc. A door off left represents a bathroom door. Morning light is flooding in the apartment through uncurtained windows. When first we will meet him, Peter Braun looks like a typical muscular California beach bum. T-shirt, shorts, and sneakers, and talks with a California drawl that's got the cadence of John Wayne thrown in. He's around 34. 3 of the others whom we are about to meet, Joel Rosenbaum, Daniel Conrad, and Mark Levy, are dressed in black turtleneck sweaters and black slacks, cowboy boots, with gold medallions on gold chains hanging down their chests. In contrast to Peter Braun and Vincent Andrews, they look as if they've stepped into this world from the Twilight Zone, but physically they run the gamut. Mark is 29, short, wiry thin, with curly black hair, thick glasses, and a permanent 5 o'clock shadow. Outwardly, he's a schlub. Outwardly. This takes 3 words if you don't know Yiddish: slob, jerk, and loser. His clothes don't quite fit him, he speaks hesitantly with lots of pauses, and his Queens New York Jewish accent is so thick you could spread it on rye bread. He is perhaps not anywhere near as bright as the others and is treated patronizingly by them, but underneath ineptitude and uncertainty lies, somewhere, the sort of man whom women refer to as sweet, and an innocence that cuts through social conventions like a knife. Nevertheless, he fancies himself to be an intellectual and cool. He's got to be kidding. Both Joel and Daniel are tall, the 6'2" range, and both are geniuses, but the resemblance stops there. Joel is 22, overweight, light brown hair with mustache and beard, a New York Jew without portfolio. He has the New York personality without the New York accent, though he speaks with the speed and over-crispness of the New Yorker. He fancies himself a writer.
With a capital W.
But Dan Conrad is older, the oldest of the arriving 4 at 30. He is an inveterate smoker of a pipe which only leaves his hands when he is eating. It is his crucial and favorite prop. He wears glasses and has a paunch, balding with long brown hair hanging down to his shoulders and a bushy mustache, no beard. And he talks with an anglicized accent, perhaps an American accent with occasional anglicisms thrown in. In any case, he speaks with the pedantry of a recent teaching fellow in theoretical physics. It is obvious right off that he is the leader of this motley crew. Vince Andrews is the youngest, 20, about 5'10", slim, blonde, clean-shaven, a native California, and the best looking of the bunch, perhaps a Chris Reeve before he did the Superman bodybuilding bit. Vince is also dressed in a casual California style, perhaps an open-collar shirt and designer jeans. It is obvious that Vince is in awe of the three new arrivals, particularly Dan, who wishes to be considered one of them but doesn't know them very well yet. Vince is just as bright as Dan or Joel, and with his good looks should be a lady killer, but he's too nervous and insecure to know it. We hear footsteps, and the California drawl of Peter Braun.
It's just lucky for you guys that the place emptied out the way it did.
A key is inserted into the door of the apartment, and as the door opens, Peter Braun, wielding the key, steps in first, followed close order by Joel Rosenbaum, Dan Conrad, Mark Levy, and Vince Andrews. Joel, Dan, Mark, and Vince start looking around, inspecting the apartment. A long pause, as what Dan sees does not particularly impress him, proclaiming,
There is no such thing as luck.
producing a cloud of smoke,
Why did the last tenants in these apartments leave, Brown?
reacting to smoke.
They were gypsies, and I mentioned that back in the Great Long Beach earthquake of 1933, some guy had a heart attack in one of these apartments and died. The next thing you know, the gypsies are out of here so fast you can hear the wind rush in.
You mean these apartments are haunted by the ghost of the guy who died here? Conrad shoots Joel a sharp glance.
Nah, they were just superstitious.
Oh. All right. Of course, they were just superstitious, Joel. The only ghost is the spirit of the times, which is leading us into revolution.
Can't you go 5 minutes without mentioning revolution? From the moment we left New York, for 3,000 miles, you haven't talked about anything but revolution. It's revolting.
Gosh, that sounds exciting. I wish I could have driven out here with you guys.
You see, Joel, now Vincent's the man who's got the anarchist spirit.
Don't give me that, Dan. I've got the anarchist spirit. I'm loaded with anarchist spirit. I've got an anarchist ectoplasm coming out of my ears. What else, if not anarchist spirit, could have induced me to climb into his demon Datsun?
What is wrong with my Datsun?
What's wrong with your Datsun, Mark? What's wrong with 3 grown men moving across country in a car that's about the size of a moped? What's wrong with a car that blows out 3 tires in one trip? What's wrong with a car the hood of which flies open at 55 miles per hour in the Rocky Mountains? What's wrong with a car that, because it hasn't had an oil change since you bought it 2 years ago, can't even break the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit? Nothing's wrong with it. The sarcasm goes right over his head.
Yeah, I thought it did a pretty good job on the trip, too.
So which one of you guys wants which apartment?
How much did you say the rent was?
$85 a month for the upper apartments and $90 for the lower ones, plus utilities.
No hesitation this time.
I'll take it up.
I'll take this apartment because it's facing the street. It might give me several minutes warning when they come to arrest me.
The cops are after you for what?
Well, nothing yet, but I'm working on it.
That leaves us. Do you want the back lower apartment or the one above it?
The lower one. I never climbed stairs when it could be avoided.
As I told my physics students when I was a teaching fellow, I always observed the law of the conservation of energy.
Huh?
Never run when you can walk. Never walk when you can stand. Never stand when you can sit. And never sit when you can lie down.
You guys wouldn't have lasted a day in my Air Force outfit in Nam.
You were in Vietnam.
In the Air Force?
Yep, still am. Air Force Reserve.
But Brown, in your letter you told me you were a fellow anarchist.
Best place for an anarchist to be is in the military. They give you all sorts of weapons, train you how to use them, and I'm too good at keeping track of them if you catch my drift.
I do indeed, feeding the dragon's tail back into its mouth while simultaneously providing the knights with leather armor. Sound revolutionary doctrine.
What?
Taking arms away from the government and giving them to revolutionaries.
No, I don't give it away to anyone. I just sell the stuff to collectors.
Hardcore, taking resources stolen from the private sector out of the public sector, where they are used for further predations and reintroducing them into the private sector.
What?
The government uses tax money to buy guns, then uses the guns as a threat to collect more taxes. By taking the guns away from the government, you reverse the process and help the revolution.
I do?
Uh-huh.
Well, I don't know about that. I admit, I haven't been paying much taxes, but if there's going to be a revolution, I wouldn't want the commies to take over.
Inefficient communist economies are utilizing the maximum of their resources, oppressing their own people. How then should we expect them successfully to extend their economic resources, invading the far more developed capitalist economies of the West?
What he means is...
I got it that time. Capitalism didn't stop the commies from taking over Nam.
Not an equivalent case at all. The American puppet regimes in South Vietnam did not have the loyalty of the Vietnamese people because they were more corrupt than the communist regime in North Vietnam, which, though more oppressive than the South, co-opted nationalistic idealism to focus a poor people's envy against the wealthy Americans who occupied their country.
I don't know about that. It seemed to me that if we had just stopped fighting with one hand tied behind our backs, we could have won that war. And if I'm weakening our military to make it easier for the commies to take over here too, I guess I just better stop ripping off the Air Force and start paying taxes again.
Braun starts toward the door.
If you guys are all set, I'd better get the keys.
Braun exits. Well, Dan, we've converted another anarchist to statism. When are we going to start converting statists to anarchism? Dan takes a long drag on his pipe, blows smoke, and says nothing.
You guys converted me. I used to be a welfare worker.
Joel raises his eyes to heaven.
No kidding, Mark? What are you now?
I'm unemployed.
Yeah.
My friends, this was an important day to mark.
Why, is it his birthday?
Whose birthday?
Him.
What does Levy have to do with this?
You said this is an important day to mark.
And so it is for today.
It's not my birthday?
Nobody said it's your birthday.
Vince said it was.
No, I was just asking if it was.
Why should you ask if it's Levi's birthday?
He asked because you said it's an important day to mark. To mark, get it? Mark!
Oh, yes, Joe.
I didn't say anything to you. I was talking to Dan. Dan was starting to say that this is an important day to mark.
And so it is for today.
But I'm Mark.
We fucking well know.
You could have fooled me.
Dan, Joel, and Vince all raise their eyes to heaven.
May I please continue?
Mark nods.
This is an auspicious day which should be marked well.
He glares at Mark just to make sure.
We three, Joel Rosenbaum, Mark Levy, and myself.
Interrupting.
My birthday is in February.
Nobody cares what your birthday is.
Vince cares.
Is there something going on between you two that we don't know about?
I just met him!
Let's hear it from Marx and Lenin.
Groucho and John?
Joel and Vince shake hands triumphantly.
Gentlemen, might I continue?
Joel and Vince look innocent and nod. Mark continues to look confused but doesn't say anything.
We three, Joel Rosenbaum, Mark Levy, and myself, have made a hazardous journey west to the frontiers of freedom, leaving the decadent East behind to join our Western ally Vincent Andrews in a noble enterprise. Today we four begin here the nucleus of a new society, a free society. By integrating theory and practice through both word and deed, we shall cast off the yoke of the state, first from ourselves, later from the entire world, nay, the inhabited universe, and future generations will look back at what we do here today as the beginning. It is in this spirit that I dub these apartments Anarchy Village.
Huzzah!
Hurrah.
Huzzah!
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 All four shake hands all around. Peter Braun enters again.
Dan Conrad, apartment 1. Joel Rosenbaum, number 2. Vincent Andrews, apartment 3. Mark Levy, 4. Bring your first month's rent to my apartment, number 5, and you're all set.
He hands keys to each of them in sequence. No credit check, no rental agreement, no last month's rent, no security deposit, not even a key deposit.
My friend, you're in California now.
Braun starts to exit again. Dan stops him.
Oh, Braun,
Braun pauses.
if you're against communism so much, why do you think the United States military, which is organized like a communist hierarchy, is the best way to defend the country? And if free private enterprise is the exact opposite of communism, then wouldn't private companies do a better job of defending us against the Russians than the military?
Well, I don't know.
Wouldn't you say, Brown, that it's the God-given right of self-defense for every American to have a nuclear missile silo in his backyard?
Well, I never thought about it that way. But come to think of it, I don't think the commies would be too quick on the draw if they had to worry about everybody shooting back at them. Thanks for setting me straight, Hilda. I wonder what Fred would pay for one of those babies.
Well, Matt's off to the Duke.
All in a day's work. Shall we start unloading, gentlemen?
Need help with your stuff?
Well, we might need a hand with our pamphlets and back issues of our magazine.
We only took the stuff we could fit into the Datsun. We shipped the rest.
Where are you parked?
In the back.
They exit and we hear their voices off right.
Mark, help me get the one off the roof rack while Vince helps Joel with the one in the back seat.
We hear the sound of metal scraping against metal, assorted grunting and cursing. Where's your stuff, Vince?
In the hall of my old dorm at UCLA. It's just lucky these apartments opened up when they did. Next week they're turning the dorm into a sorority.
And you call moving in here lucky? He's grunting, carrying in a preposterously large trunk with Dick.
Well, yeah. I mean, they wouldn't let me stay anyway after I dropped out.
Joel gives Vince a look of wonder. Then Dan and Mark enter Dan's apartment carrying an equally large trunk.
You need any help with the other two trunks?
Blackout.
Scene one.
Scene 2. Dan's apartment a week later. Lights come up in Dan's apartment, which now has been settled into. This is the apartment of a hip but right-wing anarchist intellectual. Books are everywhere. There are radical pamphlets and magazines cluttering the place. Revolutionary posters, Smash the State and Off the Pigs, are pinned up next to a poster of Howard the Duck and one sexy one of Linda Ronstadt. A black flag is on a pole, fluttering in the breeze, provided by a standing room fan. On tables, chairs, and floor are things needed for mass mailings: rubber stamps, postage guns, sealers, labels, saddles, stapler, stacks of envelopes, stacks of unfolded and unstapled offset magazines. As lights come up, Dan is alone in his apartment, dressed as before, in black turtlenecks, black boots, medallion, etc., his pipe in his mouth, making preparations for mailing. He stops for a moment to look at the poster of Linda Ronstadt.
Oh, Linda, how can you corrupt your sweet soul by dating that granola-eating status in Sacramento? Come in.
Joel and Mark enter, both still wearing black turtlenecks, slacks, boots, medallions, etc. The zine is back from the printer?
New Individual Notes, number 37, is ready to course into the ideological bloodstream of an anemic world.
Joel sees one copy already put together and reaches for it. Great. Let me just see if our new printer eliminated the cut lines in my paste up. Flips pages, starts to read.
You're not looking at cut lines, you're reading your own article on CB Radio. Collate first, read later.
Ah, come on, Dan, I haven't even had supper yet.
Are you going to put your stomach before the needs of the movement?
Damn straight. The needs of others are never a claim check upon one's own life. From Moral Imperatives, Do They Exist? Editorial by Daniel Albert Conrad IV. New Individual Notes number 2, October 1970.
You have learned the way of the self truly, my son. You have done well. But I got in a new subscription and 2 renewals today. If we get this mailing out tonight, that should just about pay for a late supper at Hamburger Henry's.
Why didn't you say so in the first place?
Me too.
Oh, why not?
Hi guys, what's going on?
Vince enters through the open door. He is now dressed exactly like the others. Black turtleneck, slacks, boots, medallion, etc.
We're mailing out NIN, and then I'm taking the loyal workers out to Hamburger Henry's.
I never said my loyalty couldn't be bought.
Splendid. We have 500 copies that need to be collated, folded, stapled, shoved in envelopes, sealed, rubber stamped with the return addresses, address label, postage stamp, and mailed out.
Yikes.
You want to save the world? He extends Vince a stack of 11 by 17 sheets.
Fold!
They quickly organize themselves into a production line on the couch, with Joel collating, Vince folding, and Mark Saddle stapling on the coffee table. Dan is at his dining room table, rubber stamping 9 by 12 manila envelopes. Vince to Dan.
Oh, I was going to read about the rhythms of their work, punctuate their conversation.
Ask you.
And should be choreographed for as much physical comedy as possible.
But we haven't done that, so we'll skip over that.
I still can't get over the way you turned Peter Brown around so fast. I've been arguing anarchy for a year and I never converted anyone.
It was simple, really. I merely had to make my argumentation to Brown even more right-wing than he was used to. He's worried about communists taking over, so I started using his own right-wing thinking against him. You can use the same basic technique on anyone.
Okay, how would I turn around a Marxist?
Quote Karl Marx's Das Kapital, where Marx said capitalism must produce wealth before the communist society can be achieved. So why aren't good communists backing capitalist investment in the third world to make them rich enough for a communist revolution?
Not bad. What do you say to a liberal?
I just say that my favorite Jane Fonda movie is Barbarella.
Hubba, hubba.
I just hit liberals with the other side of the argument I used against Braun. You say you want a society that can provide education, health care, clean air, help for the poor? Well, since a state produces nothing itself, how can it provide any of these things without first taxing the people, after setting up a self-serving bureaucracy which gives out only a fraction of the taxes it takes in?
Mark, bored by this conversation, is stapling more and more slowly.
I've used that argument. Liberals just say that we need regulation, otherwise corporations would take over everything.
And who shall guard the guardians? The agencies you set up were taken over by industrialists who use the agencies to regulate their competitors out of business.
Then you get over to their left. You can always intimidate a liberal by being more left-wing than they are, by telling them to read the Marxist historian Gabriel Kolko, who gives historical proof that monopolies only arose when private companies used the state to create them. Mark is dozing off.
Okay, so you convert people using all these different arguments. But if you're saying different things to different people, isn't this all, I don't know, manipulative? Debate tactics, making a case not because you think it's true, but only because you want to win the debate?
Not in the least. The weaknesses we're pointing out are inherent in the inconsistencies of each of these other ideologies. Once you've logically demonstrated why their viewpoint isn't self-consistent, then you can start arguing that our ideology is self-consistent, a logically self-consistent ideological map.
Mark is now asleep. Nobody notices.
What if the ideological map doesn't accurately describe the real world?
Well, you can either change the map so it matches the real world, or try to change the world so that it matches the map. Most ideologues try to force everyone to act the way their map says they're supposed to act. Once it's clear that won't work, they give up their ideology and become pragmatic power mongers.
Since we draw our basic premises by observing reality, we have to make sure we're both self-consistent and consistent to the real world, or reality will prove our ideology, like it has with communism, to be nothing but a beautifully described but impossible fantasy.
What do you do with someone who doesn't believe in the concept of ideology? Someone who thinks ideology is the problem in the first place?
You point out to them that being against ideology per se is an implicit ideology itself, the ideology of preserving the status quo.
But what most people mean when they say they're against ideology is that they're afraid that anyone with strong ideas wants to set themselves up as some sort of new dictatorship. They've got history on their side to give them a lot of good examples. Napoleon, Lenin, Hitler.
All we can do is try to demonstrate by practicing what we preach, that we're not interested in power, that power is itself the evil we're trying to eliminate.
Mark, I think I'll let you do this bit of stage business.
Loud snort.
I think the only evil power we've eliminated so far is his ability to stay awake.
Why is that? I mean, I've spent a week with you guys now, and we spend most of that time just arguing politics and philosophy. I haven't been bored once. I've been waiting years to find someone who I can have these kinds of discussions with.
Gesturing at the sleeping Mark.
Most people are as bored arguing about ideas as he is. You try to talk about ideas with most people, and they either spout something they heard in a Channel 7 editorial, or they insult you and walk away. All they want to talk about is cars or movies or who's fucking whom. It gets so I feel I'm a freak, or worse, that I'm normal and everybody else is a freak. Do you know how many conversations I've had which consisted of someone telling me the entire plot of some TV show?
It's even worse the other way. You mention some of your ideals to a relative or a friend, and you can never talk about anything else with them. All they want to do is convert you back to the real world, and it's for your own good, too. It finally gets to the point where you start hanging around with other anarchists simply because they're the only people you don't have to argue with all the time.
You seem to like arguing with me.
Ah, yeah, but that's because you argue logically, and you're actually willing to do something based on the logical conclusions of an argument.
It's paradoxical. We're individualists, but we end up having to form a cult simply so we can have someone rational to talk to. We are driven by our passionate interest in abstract ideas. These bore most people because they are things which cannot be killed or eaten or copulated with. Without planning it, we become what the Marxists accuse us of being, the cult of the individual.
But after a while, when we've argued everything out 3 or 4 times and you've heard everything we've had to say, you'll get as bored with repeating the same arguments over and over again as I am, and you'll be happy to talk about cars and movies and who's fucking whom.
Soft core, Joel. I'm willing to argue with anyone until we have enough allies to defend a free society from the remnants of the state.
Isn't he amazing? After Dan comes the deluge. Me, I'm writing a science fiction novel so I can show people what we're talking about instead of having to argue about it 20 million times.
You're a science fiction writer? Me too.
Fantastic. You published anything yet?
One short story. I wish I hadn't now. I wrote it before I became an anarchist when I was still an ecological fascist. I ended my story with my hero blasting off into space after the Earth has been made unlivable by pollution. As he's taking off, he broadcasts a speech to Earth that goes, "People of Earth, you can eat your sewage, drink your radioactive milk, breathe the stink of your effluvia, mainline drugs into your disease-ridden flesh. As for me, I'll have none of it."
That sounds a lot like my first story. Only before my hero blasts off, he gives a speech against John Cage and Jackson Pollock.
Why did you guys come out here?
I came out here because the movement back east was dying. Most of the anarchists we knew were getting involved in elections just so they felt they were doing something. Never mind that you can't bring about the absence of the state by participating in the very ritual that justifies its continued existence. Anarchists out here tend to know better than that.
You wrote in an editorial that you were getting your doctorate in theoretical physics. Did you get it?
No, I finished all my coursework, completed my PhD thesis, had the thesis approved by my faculty advisor, then refused to turn it in.
For Christ's sake, why?
After I got my master's degree, I realized that the only employment for which I could have used my doctorate would have been paid for by defense contracts. I would have spent my life serving the very system I wished to destroy.
So Atlas shrugged.
Atlas started to practice what he was preaching, make a new start out west and try to turn new individual notes into something that could support me. Until that happens, I'm typesetting a porno to paper out here. And I can use the typesetting equipment to typeset my magazines.
Vince turns to Joe. I came out here because my parents were kicking me out. Besides, Hollywood is out here. Maybe I can turn my novel into a script.
How are you going to support yourself in the meantime?
My parents are sending me money. What about you?
I started out majoring in engineering on a Navy ROTC scholarship, figuring that would be a way into the astronaut corps. The Navy thought it was training me to command ships, so I quit. Then I switched majors to TV film until I found out that the only way you learn anything is by doing it. I want to write novels and screenplays, same as you.
And in the meantime?
In the meantime, I'm working as a security guard.
Gesturing toward the sleeping Mark.
Where does he fit in?
Oh, he showed up at one of our meetings back east. He came hoping to meet girls and switch from being a Democrat to an anarchist.
Yeah, but why did you bring him out here with you?
I should think that's obvious. The only one of us with a car was Mark.
Awakening at the sound of his name.
Did somebody call me?
Yeah, you're holding up the production line. Don't you ever want to eat? As they start collating, folding, stapling, and stamping again, we black out.
Black, of course.
It's never a whiteout. Only you 25 minutes. You want to flip your tape?
Well,
Are we intermittent?
yeah, give me, like 4-minute warning or something like
Well,
that.
yeah, but your 4-minute warning.
Okay. Scene 3. Dan's apartment, a month later, September 1975. Early afternoon, but the apartment shades are down, doing the best they can to block out the sun, and lights are off. The couch is open as a fold-a-bed, and Dan is asleep, buried under the covers. There is a loud knock at the door. The covers move as Dan tries to ignore whoever is knocking.
Piss off, I'm trying to sleep.
Dan, it's me, Peter Braun.
I'll give you the rent later. Now go away, I haven't slept in 2 days.
Dan, it's not about the rent. Come on, partner, let me in. It's important.
Oh, for God's sake.
Throwing off covers. Dan is wearing only men's designer nylon underpants and a black sleeping mask, but is too sleepy and hungover to know he has the mask on. He stumbles out of bed and puts on a bathrobe, then puts on his glasses over the mask, muttering.
Everything's always important to someone.
Mask still over his eyes, he stumbles toward the door and stubs his toe on his coffee table, in agony.
Jesus!
He hops the rest of the way to the door, mask still on, and opens it. We don't see Braun yet.
Christ, it's dark. What time is it?
Opening door. Braun is now wearing a U.S. Air Force uniform.
It's 2 in the afternoon, partner. Up and at 'em.
I can't even see him. It's so bloody dark. Are you sure it isn't 2 in the morning?
Braun removes Dan's glasses and sleeping mask, then putting the glasses back on Dan's face.
This any better?
The shock of the blind. Dan covers his eyes again and stumbles back into his apartment.
How come you're sleeping so late?
Closes his eyes, turns on the inside lamp, plops down on bed, holds head, rubs eyes, still not looking at Braun.
I just spent the past 3 days at the North American Science Fiction Convention.
Yeah, what'd you do there?
Stayed up for 3 nights, drank Guinness Stout, watched The Day the Earth Stood Still, drank tequila and lime, went to a panel discussion on orgies in the 21st century, drank Jack Daniels, got into an argument with some fascist science fiction writer, threatened to stab me if I didn't recant my anarchism, drank the bastard under the table.
No wonder you look like a rattlesnake got to you.
It was wonderful. Best con I ever attended. Hey, that's a better costume than the ones in the masquerade.
That's no costume, partner. That's the uniform of the United States Air Force.
Same thing if you ask me. Why are you wearing it?
I've been called back to active duty. I'm leaving in half an hour.
But why? We haven't gone to war the past 3 days, have we? I've been bombed for 3 days, but surely somebody would have mentioned it. That fascist writer never would have let a rhetorical opportunity like a war pass unused.
Nah, we're not at war. The Air Force just has a special project they want to send me on.
What is it?
My friend, that's classified information.
Well, if you've already chosen to abandon your principles and serve the Rockefeller Empire, I suppose there's little I can say to stop you. How long will you be gone?
Don't know yet. Possibly a long time. That's why I need a couple of favors from you. For one thing, can you take over being the apartment manager? All you really have to do is take the rent every month and give it to Mrs. Wellman. Show an apartment if it opens up. Call a repairman if anything breaks down. And you get $45 a month off your rent.
I can certainly use that. All right. What else?
I need you to keep something for me until I get back.
If it's something I'll have to feed or clean up after, the answer is no.
Nothing like that. You won't have to do anything with it at all except store it for me. It's sort of valuable, and I want to make sure nobody rips it off.
Well, what is it, Brown?
You remember the day you moved in? You were telling me how it was the right of every American to have a nuclear missile silo in his backyard. Well, I got to thinking that I had a friend in Orange County who would agree with you on that. So I started looking around and found out that there were a bunch of H-bomb warheads from the early 60s that the Air Force wasn't using anymore. 50 megaton jobs. Very dirty. The Air Force doesn't need them that big anymore, now that electronics make missiles pretty accurate. Anyway, the Air Force had decommissioned a bunch of these things, and some clerk had listed them as military surplus. So I bought one to sell to my friend. It cost me $200. And then my friend said he didn't want it, so I'm stuck with it.
You wouldn't still work with it.
Depends how long ago they replaced the plutonium in the fission trigger. My guess it's good for another 5 or 6 years at the least.
You mean it's got plutonium, deuterium, everything?
Ready to go, the whole shebang. And I do mean bang. This baby goes up, it takes the Southland with it, from San Diego to the San Fernando Valley, if the Santa Ana winds were blowing. Anyway, I can't leave it in my apartment, and there's a law against keeping explosives in a public storage locker. So I figured you'd be a good man to hold on to it for me, you being a physicist and all.
It's not leaking radiation? I'd rather not get cancer.
All checked out. It's less radioactive than the water we drink from the reservoir. Besides, there are some dosimeters with, yeah, I knew that, I was testing. I also picked up surplus, okay?
Sure, Brown. Okay, I'd be happy to.
You're really doing a buddy a favor, Conrad.
He punches Dan on the shoulder.
Can you give me a hand getting it in here?
They go out to a walkway and, working together, wheel in a large crate on a hand dolly.
Easy does it.
Don't worry, I've got it.
They leave the crate in the middle of the room.
Well, that's that.
Braun... Stop reading for a second. They go out to a walkway and, working together, wheeling a large crate on a hand dolly.
Easy does it.
Don't worry, I've got it.
They leave the crate in the middle of the room.
Well, that's that.
Ron takes an envelope out of his jacket, hands it to Dan.
Here are the duplicate apartment keys and all the phone numbers you need.
Sure, Brown.
I'll remember this, Conrad. What goes around comes around, I always say. Hasta la vista, amigo.
Braun starts to leave.
Oh, Braun.
Braun pauses.
Why didn't your friend in Orange County want an H-bomb warhead in his backyard?
Oh, he did, but he already had one.
Braun exits, taking the hand dolly with him. Dan closes the door and looks at the crate curiously for a few seconds. Then he puts his eye shades back on, climbs back into bed, pulling the covers over his head. And as his hand reaches out to turn off his lamp, we black out.
Should we go off stuff all the way through?
Yes, sure.
All right, scene 4.
Scene 4, Dan's apartment a few hours later. Dan is now awake in his bathrobe and cooking breakfast. The fold-a-bed is a couch again. The Sex Pistols' Anarchy in the UK is playing on Dan's stereo. The crate is still in the middle of the living room. There is a knock at the door.
Come in.
Joel enters, leaving the door open. Hangover gone yet?
Mostly. How come you never come back from cons hungover?
Because while you're at the room parties getting drunk, I'm down in the film room watching movies all night.
What a waste of a good con. Want some breakfast?
Thanks, but I had breakfast this morning.
You're turning down a free meal?
I didn't say that. Since I already had breakfast, this will be, late afternoon high tea.
That's more like it.
Dan gets out additional food and continues cooking. Joel notices the crate. What's in the crate?
A 50 megaton nuclear missile warhead, 1 acre 2.
Right, mind my own damn business. 2x, thanks.
Actually, it's Peter Brown's business. He's been called back to active duty in the Air Force, poor bastard. Made me the new apartment manager on his way out.
Yeah, I know, I ran into him.
Enter.
Vince enters, holding an empty salt shaker.
Dan, have you got any spare salt? I used my last shaker on supper yesterday.
Sure.
Dan gets salt from a cupboard, tosses it to Vince.
I'm preparing us some breakfast. Care to join us?
Thanks, don't mind if I do. Saves me the trouble.
Joel looks at Vince strangely. Didn't you get up 9 hours ago?
Mm-hmm.
And you haven't eaten yet today?
Uh-huh.
For heaven's sake, why not?
I forgot.
Joel and Dan exchange glasses, look down at their own bulging middles, then across at Vince's perfect physique.
He forgot.
What have you got in the crate?
The 50 megaton nuclear missile warhead, 1 acre 2.
Ask a stupid question, get a stupid answer. 1 egg.
Cross my threshold.
Mark enters.
You having a party?
It's just breakfast. You hungry?
Sure.
1 acre 2.
Can I have 3?
I suppose my generosity can be stretched that far.
What about 4?
But not that far.
But okay, 3 eggs is fine.
Didn't you just finish dinner? Didn't you just finish dinner?
Yeah.
And you're hungry again?
Uh-huh.
There is some fundamental metabolic principle which has it in for the two of us.
What's in the crate?
The 50 megaton nuclear missile warhead.
Mark thinks about this for a second.
Can I see it?
Joel and Vince exchange glasses. What a sucker.
Oh, very well. Just be careful opening it.
While Vince and Joel watch in amazement, Mark goes to the crate, looks at it for a few seconds, and lifts off the lid. The sides drop down, revealing the warhead. Mark begins looking at it. After a few seconds, Joel and Vince go over and begin looking at it. Vince sees a technical manual and picks it up.
United States Air Force Maintenance Manual 309576 Thermonuclear Missile Warhead, Airburst Type, Megaton Yield 50. Boy, this is terrific. Who makes it? Mattel?
Oh no, does it say on the manual?
Let's see. Okay, here we go. If unable to effect on-site repairs to warhead, return post-pay to the manufacturer, Lockheed Corporation, Nuclear Weapons Division, Seal Beach, California. Huh, I didn't know Lockheed had a toys division.
Vince, you didn't say Toys Division, you said Nuclear Weapons Division.
Right, that's what the manual says.
Correct me if I'm missing something. Wouldn't a division of a company devoted to making toys be called the Toys Division?
I think so.
Well, let me take this one logical step further. Wouldn't a division of a company called the Nuclear Weapons Division be devoted to making not toys, but, say, nuclear weapons?
I'd have to agree with you on that.
Both Joel and Vince stand there blankly for a few seconds, then shouting simultaneously,
It's a 50 megaton nuclear bomb!
Right, tell the whole neighborhood, why don't you?
Joel and Vince start making shushing sounds to each other. Joel creeps over to the door and shuts it. Mark.
Yeah, it's neighbors find out Dan's got a nuclear bomb, then everybody will get one and it won't be special anymore.
Vince and Joel roll their eyes. Dan, what in the name of God are you doing with nuclear bomb in your living room?
I told you already, Peter Brown left it with me. He didn't have anywhere else to leave it.
Vince is looking over the manual. But it's a nuclear bomb in your living room.
Since both of your statements are directly observable, they are true but redundant. What's your point?
Dan, This is a nuclear bomb. They have a technical term for the place where it goes off. They call it ground zero. They also have a technical term for anything at ground zero when a nuclear bomb goes off. The term is X. If this bomb goes off, this will be an X living room. And everything within 50 miles of this living room will also be X. This will be an X apartment in an X anarchy village. There will be an X Queen Mary, X 7-Elevens, X Winchell Donuts, X Freeways, X Disneyland, X Knott's Berry Farm, and most importantly, X us.
Hey, this thing is designed to detonate at a 500-foot level above the sea.
Vince, we are at sea level now. So is the bomb. Are you trying to tell me that it should have already gone off?
Interesting question. Let me just flip a few pages here.
Vince begins reading casually, while Joel waits, growing more agitated with each passing second.
Ah! Here it is. Warhead must be enabled and altimeter set before warhead will be in detonation mode.
Thank God for that.
For enabling procedures, see operations manual.
Mark reaches down and picks up a second manual, hands it to Vince.
United States Air Force Operations Manual. Thermonuclear missile warhead, airburst type, megaton yield 50. Thanks, Mark.
Gentlemen, breakfast is served.
Dan, Vince, and Mark take their seats around Dan's table immediately. Joel looks at them dumbfounded. You all gone crazy? Do you expect me to eat breakfast at thermonuclear ground zero?
Joel, you've lived within the circle of total nuclear destruction for your entire life. There's no evidence it's affected your appetite so far.
Joel considers this for a moment, then joins the others.
So, Dan, you're an anarchist. You're a committed revolutionary. You've got a bigger bomb now than any revolutionary or anarchist in history. Just what do you propose doing with it?
Doing with it?
Doing with it. For example, you hide it in Washington, D.C., and demand the U.S. government disbands. Or else.
Or else what?
Or else you set off the bomb.
But Vince, while a lot of people who deserve to be dead would be made that way by setting off the bomb, if even one innocent person were injured, we would have violated every principle we stand for. Even threatening to set it off would violate individual rights. But all this is theoretical anyway, since it's not my bomb. It's Peter Brown's bomb, and I can't use it without permission because that would be a violation of contract.
Vince begins flipping through the manuals. Then you're not going to do anything with it?
Oh, I'll probably get around to moving it near to the wall. It's in the way in the middle of the living room.
Has it occurred to you that more than several people in the government might be upset with you if they knew you had a nuclear bomb?
Yes, I'm finally doing something sufficiently illegal to justify my revolutionary existence.
I've been looking through the maintenance log. This thing didn't exactly pass its last inspection.
Well, it was sold as a government surplus.
You mean we don't even know if it'll work?
That's right.
Everyone is silent while eating for a few seconds. Then
why don't we try it?
as the other three look at Mark with wonderment, Anarchy in the UK rises in volume and we black out.
Thank you. Just throw money.
Scene 5. Dan's apartment 2 weeks later. Night. Dan is at his desk, typing away, puffing on his pipe. The warhead has been removed from its crate and placed over one side of the room. The door is closed. There is a single rap at the door, a pause, Dan gets up from his desk and goes over to the door.
The horn blows at midnight.
The Emperor has no clothes.
My dog has fleas.
Karl Marx wore pink pajamas.
The moon is over Poughkeepsie.
The desert sand, I can't remember what the bloody sand does.
The desert sand blows west.
Ah, the desert's, right, the desert sand blows west.
55 saves lives.
Whip inflation now.
You missed your third countersign. How do I know it's really you?
Dan puffs on his pipe, long pause, then he opens the door.
Does convince you?
Vince comes in carrying a large shopping bag but looks at Dan suspiciously.
For all I know, you could be drugged.
Vincent, The purpose of these idiotic procedures is to make me paranoid about who's outside, not to make you paranoid about who's inside.
Well, I'll let it go this time, Conrad, but I'm watching you.
Bring the stuff? Yep.
Vince removes a small metallic device and sets it on the coffee table.
The last set of dosimeters came up clean. Replacement is tomorrow at 1300 sharp. And Mark better not lose his again.
If Mark isn't worried about dying from radiation sickness, isn't that his business?
Are you crazy? Do you know what would happen if a coroner determined Mark's cause of death as radiation poisoning? We'd have 50 federal agents over here in minutes. He either uses his dosimeters properly, or he doesn't get into this apartment again.
Vincent, this is my apartment. I decide who gets in here.
And you appointed me as radiation safety officer. Of course, if you're asking for my resignation.
I wouldn't dream of it.
Oh, okay then.
Dan goes over to the door. J.D. Salinger loves company.
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
My mother's dress is green.
Art Linkletter has 12 toes.
I buried Paul.
The Queen Mary sails at noon.
She'll be comin' round the mountain when she comes.
Doo-dah, doo-dah.
Dan opens the door and Joel comes in. Well, are we dead men?
Our personal dosimeters show we haven't been exposed to any measurable radiation. Joel, you're Jewish.
Sure, but try doing a Star of David on your chest.
I was about to try out the Geiger counter. Okay, Dan?
Proceed.
Vince picks up the device from the coffee table and unclips a microphone-like sensor.
I brought along a radium dial wristwatch as a control.
He holds the watch out at arm's length, then puts the sensor up close to it. A loud burst of static results.
Okay, it's working. Now, the moment of truth.
Vince takes the Geiger counter around the apartment, pointing at various items. Silence. He's getting closer and closer to the warhead until finally, he sticks the sensor directly toward the warhead and scans it up and down and all around it. Complete silence.
Well, so far, so good.
Dan goes over to the door. Behind door, after an endless pause.
Black cat that has
Dan throws open the door, grabs Mark by the arm, and bodily yanks him inside, shutting the door after him. To Dan, after a pause.
a black cat has 3 kittens.
Mark, you don't have to go through all that once you're inside. Only when you're outside.
Oh.
Mark thinks about it, then starts toward the door again. Dan throws himself against the door, blocking the way.
Mark, stay!
Mark stops.
Sit!
Mark takes a seat on the couch. Dan sees a bowl of potato chips sitting on his coffee table, grabs a chip, and shoves it into Mark's mouth.
Good boy.
Mark giggles good-humoredly. Dan, are you starting to get the feeling that perhaps that device over there has taken over our lives?
The universe does seem to warp around it, doesn't it?
Frankly, I prefer going back to a more primitive lifestyle. I'm sick of paranoia. I long for a return to simple fanaticism.
I don't suppose you can suggest how we can transform this longing of yours into a practical plan.
Couldn't we find some way to, give it back?
To Peter Brown? I have no way to track him down.
I wasn't thinking of Brown. I rather had in mind the folks who made it.
Soft core. I can't believe you could actually consider, for a moment, arming the state.
In practical terms, returning it isn't likely to alter the balance of power very much.
Won't it? How many anarchists do you know who have a nuclear weapon?
But I thought you said there was no moral way we could use it.
Not true. I said there's no way we can morally explode it or morally threaten to explode it.
Well, how else can we use the damn thing?
We cannot explode it.
I beg your pardon?
He can't pardon you. You'll have to see the governor.
I said we cannot explode it. we can take the explicit action of possessing a nuclear weapon which we will not explode and which will not be exploded. Not only is this one less nuclear weapon that the state can use for its nefarious purposes, but by possessing a nuclear weapon, which we pointedly do not explode, we are giving the world a strong demonstration of our principles.
Some demonstration. We've been skulking around for 2 weeks, making sure that nobody knows we have it. How are we supposed to demonstrate anything? We keep it secret.
A point well taken. And I think it speaks to the issue you raised earlier. The bomb has not been interfering with our lifestyle. Our attempts at secrecy have been doing that. I suggest we simply stop keeping the bomb secret.
Vince, the phone book is over there. Get the number of the FBI, will you? I think they'd be interested.
I assume you are attempting a rhetorical point.
Dan, we don't keep the bomb secret. Then, as the song says, the man will come and take us away.
Then don't tell them.
Say what?
Don't tell them. The FBI and their ilk are unlikely to be impressed by the moral significance of our demonstration.
Are you seriously contending that you can keep a nuclear weapon as an open secret and not have any of several hundred police agencies learn of it?
Precisely.
Just how do you expect this to work?
Well, to start off, who would be naive enough to believe that it could possibly be the real thing?
Joel and Vince both look pointedly at Mark.
A statistical anomaly, I assure you.
Suddenly, there is some unmistakable rumbling, furniture rattles, sways, etc. Earthquake! Both Vince and Joel immediately try to crawl under the coffee table. Suddenly, just about as the rumbling stops, stage lights black out, and we hear the static crackle of the Geiger counter going crazy. The rest of the scene is in blackout. Oh my God.
Dan, you got a flashlight?
Hold on a second.
We're all gonna die.
Wait, here you go.
We see the beam of flashlight scan around for a few seconds. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not. Oh, what the hell is it that I shall not?
It's okay, guys. The bomb's still secure. The Geiger counter was picking up my wristwatch.
After a long silence. Okay, which one of you guys farted? Another long pause. I hope one of you guys farted.
And on that cheerful note.
That's all we have, though.
I suspect you could prod the writer into